think that there's nobody involved with Wendy Williams Show that was happy about the way it ended, right?
How you doing?
This was a show that had been on the air for 13 years. There was a love for Wendy herself, and so it was distressing to see her not be in a condition to be there. You know, I think a lot of people involved with the show didn't hear from her for several months. A good portion of the season, which again was distressing. And I think that there was a sort of a general feeling of really sort of this bittersweetness to the end of the show. The concerns about her health are vast. There was a Zoom call at the beginning of the season. It was, 10 days or so after the season was supposed to launch. It had already been pushed back by a couple of weeks. There were, headlines galore about different sort of health struggles that Wendy was going through. So the heads of the production company put together a Zoom call with Wendy to basically say, have a look at her, talk to her, reassure them things were going to be okay. And so that's what they did. Unfortunately, it did not go as planned. And the many people I spoke to sort of described a scenario where she was sort of rambling. She sort of became incoherent. She was talking about, oh, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. But it was very clear to everybody watching that she wasn't fine and that she wasn't going to sort of be back at the show anytime soon. So it did exactly the opposite of what it was supposed to do, which was calm the fears of the staff. I mean, the producers involved with the Wendy Williams Show, they waited as long as they possibly could, and then arguably even longer for Wendy to come back. She was someone who had performed incredibly well. She had a fiercely loyal fan base. They wanted her to come back. They pushed the stations as long as they possibly could before deciding, we got to make a call here and we can't renew the maybe Wendy Williams Show. And at that time, they decided to replace her with a show with Sherry Shepherd. What they said to her each time they spoke to her from, February all the way up until, quite frankly, very recently is, we'd love to work with you again. We'd love to have you back on the air, but we need to know that you are actually okay to be back on the air. And the way to do that is to provide a doctor's note. It is something that insurance companies would need to be able to, support such a thing, to be able to ensure someone in her position could come back on the air. This is a woman who's been off the air for an entire year. They needed to know she was okay. They needed a doctor's diagnosis and a note to say she was capable of performing on a daily basis. And that was something, according to all of my sources, that she was unable or unwilling to provide. There were a number of phone conversations between Wendy and the producers this past April, where each time Wendy didn't realize that her show was ending. She was, she's sort of confused about, well, wait a second, what's Sherry Shepherd doing? And is my show, I'm coming back, right? And so each time these producers had to have these heartbreaking conversations with her and tell her again and again that, in fact, the show isn't coming back. They hadn't heard from her for, 8-9 months. She wasn't in a position to be back on air as far as they could tell. And I think that there was like a lot of sort of debate and discussion around how to actually end the show. And, people had a lot of opinions about it, but internally there were also a lot of opinions and a lot of back and forth about how you say goodbye to a show without its hosts. And she's very much alive. And everything was considered. The only thing that was not considered was bringing Wendy back. So I don't know if that's something that's relevant or interesting.